Hi everyone, welcome to our guitar lesson on bar chords. This is the 7th of a series of 10 basic lessons brought to you by TheGuitarLesson.com. And my name is Tom Fontana, and as I said, we're going to be looking at bar chords today. And this is an area that all beginners dislike, since to tell you the truth, holding a bar chord correctly is not exactly the easiest thing in the world. But the good news is that if you learn how to do one correctly, then you'll be able to hold on any bar chord at any fret on your guitar. And let me just explain what I mean by that. So bar chords, they're often referred to as movable chords, since it involves holding a bar over 5 or 6 strings of your guitar at any given fret with your first finger. So your finger is actually replacing the nut of your guitar right here, okay? And once your finger becomes the nut, you'll be able to move it to any fret, thereby change the pitch of your given bar chord. And this is really great since if you remember lesson number 2 on chords, we always plucked an open string with every chord. So for example, I don't know, the E major, we had 3 open strings. The E minor, we had 4 open strings. And we had open strings with the other chords as well. But if you transform your finger and make it, turn it into the nut, forming it into a bar, you'll be able to take these basic chord shapes with you anywhere on the fretboard. Since you won't have any open strings left due to the fact that your first finger is holding all of them down. So let's just learn by doing. I'm going to ask you to lay your first finger across every single string at fret 3. Push down really, really hard and just pluck all the strings. Okay, now chances are you just had 2 or 3 of the 6 strings ringing clearly, but don't worry, we'll work on it in a second. But first I just want to show you the E-shape bar chord. This is a major bar chord and is used very, very often. So once your finger is laying at fret 3, or any other fret for that matter, place your second finger onto the G string 1 fret over from your first finger, and then place your third finger 2 frets away from your first finger onto the A string, and your pinky right below it onto the D string. And if you're holding tight enough, it should sound like this. You'll want to pivot your wrist around and find the best position where your first finger is holding down all of the strings that it needs to, okay? This sound right here means that you're not holding with enough pressure, so you have to press really, really hard to get a clear sound. I'll just tilt the guitar and show you what my thumb is up to. It's right in the middle of the neck, and notice that I'm actually pinching the guitar between my thumb and my first finger. So that was an E-shape bar chord, and just to clarify, the reason it's called E-shape is because if you move this shape down, so your first finger is at fret 0, so it becomes the nut. We have the E major chord that we learned a couple of lessons ago, and this is what I was talking about by your thumb becoming the nut. You just form a bar over any fret, and you can take this shape with you and play it anywhere on the fretboard. So that was at fret 3, and as you know, the E major, it's a major chord, so it's a happy sounding chord, unlike the minor. But of course, since we increased our pitch, it won't be an E major anymore, unlike it was here. It becomes a G major when you're holding down the bar chord at fret 3. Since the third fret of the low E string, where I'm rooting the bar chord, is a G note. Okay, so this was the G major bar chord, but we can play the minor version as well. All you have to do is take your second finger off the fretboard. So this one is actually more difficult than the major shape, since your first finger has to be holding another string down perfectly as well. Now what I suggest you do is play around with your wrist. Usually the more you move it forward, the straighter you can make your first finger, so it'll lay flatter against the strings. And also have your finger very close to the fret right there, the metal fret right there, and it should be rolled onto its side like this, so it's not entirely on the flat part. And it's also important that the tip of your finger past the edge of your fretboard. You see that my finger is above the edge of the fretboard right there, so you just want to experiment with that a lot, okay? But really, even with all this, I would be surprised if you can get all of the strings to ring clearly right now. Sorry. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of strength, not just from your fingers, but from your underarm as well. Right here, since you're pinching the guitar with your thumb and index finger, which uses your muscles on your underarm right there. So you'll need to practice this a lot until you get it right most of the time. And just so you know, all guitarists have a hell of a struggle with this bar chord. in the beginning. They really are one of the most difficult techniques you'll be learning, but really, the good thing is that if you can do it at fret 3, you'll be able to do it anywhere on the fretboard and use it in a bunch of songs. So, just returning to the G minor bar chord we just learned. Now, the reason it was so easy to make a minor out of the major is because of the E shape. Just remember the E major chord that we learned in lesson number 2, then change it into an E minor chord. And you should really see the correlation between the major and minor bar chords right there, okay? Now let's have a look at another type of bar chord, the A-shaped bar chord. And yes, if you think about the E-shaped bar chord, which was an E major, and then you think about the A-shaped bar chord, you'll probably see that it roots off our normal original A that we learned back in lesson number 2. Let's have a look at the A-shaped major bar chord first. You just move your first finger down to string A and mute string E with the tip of your finger. And now place your second finger 2 frets away from your first finger onto string D, your third finger below that onto string G, and your pinky below that one onto string B, and just pluck strings A through E. Now those fingers stacked in there won't take you too far since they won't fit into the smaller frets higher up the fretboard. So you could also hold them like this with your third finger and just try not to touch the high E string right there since it's part of the chord. Now to tell you the truth, when I hold down this bar chord, I'm always touching the high E string and my fingers are just too big. So I'm always muting the string. And this is true for most guitarists, but it really doesn't matter. I suggest you use this version instead of the finger stacking one. And don't worry about the high E string. The point is just don't let it rattle, okay? Now let's look at the minor version of the A-shaped bar chord. And it's really easy since it resembles the E-shaped major bar chord. You just have to move everything down one string and you don't pluck the low E again. Ooh, you can really hear that dark minor sound right there. So, just experiment with it. Play the major and minor chords after each other. Just try to make all the strings ring clearly as we discussed, okay? And now, I know that bar chords are difficult. The strings eat into your flesh and your hands get really tired really quickly. But, just don't get frustrated. There's no point to that. When your hands feel tired, stop, give it a stretch. And when it gets tired, just practice something else and return to the bar chord on the next day maybe or later on. You'll see that they'll really get much better with time, with every day of practice as your hands and fingers get stronger. And as I said, when you play one bar chord, you'll be able to play all of them just by moving around on the neck of the guitar. So I'm sure you've seen some guitarists playing at gigs and just moving their hand around with the same shape and getting really cool sounds out of it. Well, you guessed it, they're playing bar chords. So really, I'll show you quickly. Let's see the F major, G, A major, B, C, and etc. Now I want to show you a simple cover version of Stand By Me by Benny King. I'm only going to be using bar chords that we've learned in this lesson, okay? So just listen to it. Okay, so that was actually just 4 bar chords. You can try it as well. Just check out the tabs on the screen and practice it. You can see that these bar chords are really powerful. I mean, just holding a couple of bar chords and you can basically play a song. So really, practice them. You'll put it to much great use later on, okay? Okay, good. So we've actually reached the end of the lesson. You learned quite a handful today, so you'll have a lot to practice until our next lesson, which will be lesson number 8 of the entire series of 10 basic lessons. And in lesson number 8, we'll be covering some cool lead guitar and soloing techniques that I'm sure you'll enjoy playing. So if you haven't already, then download it from TheGuitarLesson.com, and I'll see you then. Bye.